G'day everyone, Jaimunji here, and I have Drew back on the channel, and you know what that
Hi,
means.
everybody.
That means it is time for us to predict the lineup again while Drew turns super blurry on camera and he's back. How are you today, mate?
I am very good. I think it is picking up the Lego cat in the background, so I will endeavor to keep my head in front of it. And yes, it is prediction time again, and I don't think anybody could have predicted park waves as a thing. I
No.
only heard about it when this whole sort of campaign came about, and then I found they did that festival in Germany last year. So it's very interesting to see a completely new festival pop up, especially kind of around Knotfest time as well. So
Mm.
that has me thinking, is Knotfest Australia going to be a thing in 2024? Sorry, 2025.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well because I looked at it, I was like, well, it could still run, just bump it to the end of March like they did the first two. Because I look at it and I'm like, maybe they're not going to do it next year. Maybe they're taking a year off, and this is kind of to fill in. Because the whole idea of park waves, it's doing a lot of like more regional. Like it's coming up my way. It's coming up the Maitland. It's going to Byron Bay if the council says yes. You got Sydney. That's a lot of shows in one state. Where a good thing is like, let's get 30,000 people to come to Sydney because they
Yep.
will. And if you divide that up, so you're looking at shows that are maybe 10,000 each, right? Like that's good. That's good. You can get a lot of people. Maybe some are going to be 8,000. Maybe some are going to be 12,000. But they're not going to aim to fill out Centennial Park. You just can't on a touring. Like it's like Vans Warped Tour essentially.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's interesting to note that also Destroy All Lines, the touring company that is putting on this, puts on good things, not fest. They're also putting on Hellbound Cruise this
Mm.
in 2026 as well. So do they just have a lot on their plate where they're not doing Knotfest, or is this very much a case of like, hey, we've got the power, we can just chuck this other festival in here and still have Knotfest on top? So I'm really curious to see if the two festivals do run. Does Knotfest move to later in the year potentially? Who knows? There's a lot of things that could happen.
Yeah, no, and you could probably even get away with Knotfest being in April as well if you wanted to give it that extra buffer because that's before the summer festivals in Europe kick off,
Yeah.
and it's still warm enough here to keep things going on. Especially, I'm sure people up in Queensland would be like, "Yes, push it later," like you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But
they don't want it in the heat of summer where they literally just melt alive.
exactly, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see, and I don't think we're not going to hear about if not Fest, or even if it's not Fest, it could be called Download again. It depends on the licensing because that's what it is. Destroyer Alliance gets the licensing rights to, not necessarily those. They're not running it. It's not Fest. I think they have a bit more of a hand in the jar than they do like Download. But Download was literally just buying the name, buying the pictures, buying the
Yep.
licensing. So who knows? I still think a festival will take place in March. Maybe they're really pumped on the lineup and they're like, yep, Good Things is going to be massive. Not Fest or whatever that is going to be massive. We can afford to have all of our massive Aussie bands run a festival at the same time. And I kind of jumped the gun there a little bit because I do think it's going to be primarily Aussie bands due to the massive gaps. This thing starts in February and basically only runs Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then takes time off. So it's going to be hard to bring down multiple international acts. I still think we're going to get at least two.
Yeah, I think we're going to get at least two as well. And we've seen so many bands and their dogs tour here that there is definitely probably a few that still are yet to tour here, or ones that have now toured here like 2 to 3 years ago that are due to come back, and that would be good for a slot like a Parkwaves. The interesting thing as well, I brought up the Hellbound Cruise earlier. That is another brand or festival that is all Aussie bands as
Mm.
well. So because we're seeing that on the cruise, and maybe because the demand for the cruise was so big, maybe they're giving the land version of the festival. So I initially thought maybe there won't be some crossover bands, but now I'm starting to think there actually might be some crossover bands besides the obvious.
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on that as well. So let's get into it. Obviously, let's just say Parkway Drive, they're on everything. They're showing it. Parkway Drive. It's like the first Knotfest was always going to be
Yeah.
Slipknot. So it's Parkway Drive. But how many bands do you think are going to be playing this thing? Let's start there.
If we're basing it off how it was in Germany last year, I think around 7 to 8.
That's,
I
yeah.
imagine it's going to be a one stage kind of thing, potentially a two-stage setup similar to Knotfest, where they kind of rotate through. But I actually see it more, given that they are playing so many regional areas, it is just going to be a one stage. That means you're going to have that 15 to half an hour gap between bands, which means if they start 2 o'clock in the afternoon and go to like 10, 11 at night, you can comfortably fit probably, I'd say, about 7 bands on in that time.
Yeah, easily. And I do think there still might be like you'll have a wrestling ring, maybe do pro wrestling, some of these things. There'll be activities that are happening. So if you don't necessarily want to see that band, like they have fire dances, there'll be a
Yeah.
karaoke band. They could have that little thing off in the distance. So I do think there is still, regardless, there's going to be activities besides the band playing on the stage. But yeah, I think it's right. I think 7 or 8, or even like 7 or 8 bands with one local support that's different on everything, just to do a 20-minute set, start up the day. All their gear will be in front. It'll basically be like, you get to play for a couple of minutes, and we're just going to strip your stuff off stage, and then
Yeah.
everything's kind of set up behind it. So I'm going to go down the list. I'm going to go the most obvious one, I think, first. And I didn't talk to you about this before, so I don't know if you saw it. Joel from Amity Affliction just shared it on his story.
I did not see that. I was actually predicting Amity Affliction as one of the ones. It was kind of conspicuous that they were left off the lineup of Hellbound.
Mm.
So I thought they need to slot them in somewhere. They are a massive Australian metal act. They need to be somewhere. They need to be in a high up position as well. And I think they're the perfect band to sort of second
Yeah.
Parkway Drive, if you will. So I actually see Amity being a very, very likely contender, and that pretty much confirms it.
And the whole thing called Park Waves, I don't think any band talks about the ocean as a metaphor for depression more than the Amity Affliction. So I think the Amity Affliction, they were already a lock for me regardless, because I'm like, if you're going to do this and you're going to use Aussie bands, Parkway's done the tour. Everyone loves Parkway, but I think if you want to get the regional shows filled up, you need to chuck the other guys on there. And I think that's where Amity fits in perfectly. And keeping that ball roll, well, I'll throw it over to you. Did you have another? Let's go another Aussie band. We'll get to the international acts in a bit. We'll keep you guys watching.
I don't think it's going to be a North Lane or a Polaris situation.
Ah,
Given that they're both on Hellbound, you don't want to stack the top of the card, if you will, so high. So I think an act that's kind of set, I think, for a bit of a breakout year and are making an appearance on Hellbound as well, that would be perfect for this kind of festival, and they're lovely lads as well, is Windwaker. I reckon they're
yeah.
going to make a return to festivals like that, and Park Waves is, I think, a really good place to put them.
No, I think you're right on that one as well, and I'd love to see those boys on it. I just want more people to see them. They're a lot of fun. They sound fantastic live. They're young. You know, they're still, some of them have still got acne breakouts and everything. So it's good to watch those guys grow up. So I think their last album, Hyperviolence, was phenomenal. So it'd be good to get them out there as well. And I will go another Aussie act, and this does fall into another Hellbound, but I think they have to be on there because if Byron Bay Council, which I don't think they will, but if Byron Bay Council does approve it, it'd be weird not to have In Heart's Wake on it.
It would be really strange, and they are super fun live. They are lovely guys as well. We've had the chance to interview them at Good Things last year, and it just makes sense for a band like In Heart's Wake to be on. They're very environmentally conscious. You have the whole park waves kind of
Yeah.
thing going on as well. So it just makes sense. And like you said, them being Byron boys as well, it would be weird not to have them on. And they're, I think, a sufficiently big act that they kind of fill that top end of the card,
Oh, yeah.
like that bridge sort of between the top end of the card. But I'm really curious to see who your internationals are. I've got one that I am selfishly hoping for.
Yep.
Don't think it'll necessarily happen. They
Okay.
do have a song called In Waves.
Uh,
I think the length of the tour is possibly too long, given that they'll likely have an album out by that time. But I know they love Australia. I know Matt Heafy's favorite restaurant, Chin Chin, which I have been to, is absolutely delicious. And I'm sure they would love to take some time to tour around. I don't know if they can afford to do it, but I reckon Trivium would be a really good pick. It's a dark horse, but I'm just kind of hopeful that that's
I don't
what's going to
think
happen.
I don't think you're too far off. This is the point I was going to bring up, and I'm glad you mentioned Trivium because they fit in that category. If you're going to chuck in some side shows, like a show in Sydney, a show up at Canberra, maybe something like that, the band that is the international act needs to be able to sell side shows as well. And I feel they're definitely not one that was going to be a headliner, like a Day to Remember type of band. But I feel you needed that. A Trivium is the perfect size. You could even go a little bit smaller of a band that's like, right, we're going to be in Australia for a month. touring around this festival. We're going to do some side shows in between during the weekdays in the major cities because yeah, it could definitely work. And I think Trivium fills that really well because I was going to go, and I'm a bit torn because they did come down here with Parkway. My original one was going to be like an I Prevail. And I'm like, no, maybe not. So now I'm leaning towards maybe Beartooth, another kind of metalcore act. And I think Beartooth would actually fit that quite well.
Beartooth are actually a really good choice. I didn't have them on my bingo card for that at all. And it's been a while since they've been down. I wouldn't be surprised to see them on a Good Things if they're not on Parkwaves, because they are very much overdue for a festival slot. And they're the kind of band that can really, I think, like you said, sell those side shows, but also have fun just touring the Australian countryside for like a month at a time. And I think they're just sufficiently that size where it makes sense that people will come to the shows as well.
Yeah.
I think Beartooth, that's a bit of a left field pick for me, but I think that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, it was a bit harder for me to pick the international acts because I was tossing up because I was thought, and I'm just going to rattle off a couple of names here of bands around that size that I think could, if they do have internationals. I'm not saying they're going to, but a Killswitch Engage could have been one. You know, they've got the new album out as well. They could be a good thing. So I do think they're going to be on a festival slot. They keep coming out here, opening for bands like in support, like they came in support of Iron Maiden. Funny enough, before that, in support of Parkway Drive. So I feel they need to do a festival slot with their own sideshow where they're the big boys. I think they're really overdue for that. But I feel Killswitch are that kind of act now where it's, yeah, of course they could do it down here by themselves. But I think it's safe to be on a festival. And I think they could definitely fit this. And they're currently doing that Summer of Loud with Parkway, with Amity Affliction over in the US, I think right now. Like it's one of those ones where it's going on. And I think it's definitely going to we're keeping in the metalcore. Doesn't need to be all modern metalcore. We could have some classic metalcore. I'm definitely ruling out As I Lay Dying for obvious reasons. But yeah, I do think like bands like that, like if Atreyu weren't down here in the next week or two, I would have even thrown Atreyu's name out.
Yep, I definitely would have said Atreyu. I would have said even potentially somebody like Drowning Pool if they weren't here with Alien Ant Farm a while. Kind of, they fall a bit into that nostalgia act to some degree now because everybody heard Bodies Hit the Floor when they were watching ECW as a kid. Yeah. But they still have a lot of good new stuff as well. And they're fantastic live. You and I both saw them. They were great. But going back to the Aussie acts, you need hardcore. You always need hardcore. And it seems like we always have Alpha Wolf popping up absolutely everywhere. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Alpha Wolf. But I think it's time that Speed make a return to one of the festivals.
You bastard.
That was fun. I want to hear the flute live to the first test. I would like to see Speed at a festival because I haven't seen them at a festival, even though I was at one that they were at. So I think that is probably the perfect spot to put them.
Speed were on my list, and I was going to make the Alpha Wolf. I was like, I think Alpha Wolf could play, and I think that's a possibility, but I think Speed is almost a lock.
I think they're like, we got that mind meld going.
Yeah. No, I think Speed's definitely a lock as well. And another Aussie band that could go out there, and I've been waiting for them to appear. I thought they were going to be on Hellbound, and it breaks it up a little bit as well, gets a bit of female representation in there too, is RedHook.
Yeah. RedHook is actually a really good pick. You could have put Relica in a similar slot as well. If they weren't playing Hellbound, I probably would have said them. But RedHook, they've kind of been blowing up with TikTok and just their songs have been appearing all over the radio on Triple J, for example. I wouldn't be surprised to see them there at all and bring that female-fronted Aussie metal power because I know we've got a lot of it. I know Mark would really love Future Static, for example, to be on the festival too.
Yes, and they're another one I could mention.
A good photographer, buddy Mark.
I think I'm going to leave it there. I think the last one I'll throw out is I would like to see Thy Art as Murder on it. If you've got Parkway and Amity as some of the old guard doing it, Thy Art should jump on it too because they're one of the big four of the original deathcore. Not a lot of bands can say that.
That is very true. I'm going to throw out another random little one. Gravemind, they're an Aussie sort of technical death metal kind of band. I have seen them live actually supporting In Heart's Wake, and they absolutely blew me away. Recommend checking out Gravemind. They're great.
All right, I'll check them out. I haven't heard of them. I'll check that out when we're done here. But Drew, thanks once again. We'll be back. We might do an updated version of the Good Things prediction video because a lot of tours have been announced since then, which have kind of made some of our guesses debunked. So we might revisit
Yes.
that. Yeah, I do think a Knotfest or a festival is going to take place during that March slot. What it is, I do not know. Or maybe they're just going to take a break for a year, let Parkway do this tour, and maybe Park Waves will be the tour that kind of replaces the March tour for. I don't think it'll be regional every year though. I don't think you don't want to go to the world too many times. So you do one
Yep.
big regional one and then you do the major cities after that. But it's going to be fun. What a great time to be a music fan. What a expensive time for my wallet though. But you know what? You always earn more money at the end of the day. I could spend it on dumber shit.
Yep. Money comes and goes and metal never dies. So that's the quote for the video.
Yeah, that's the quote for the video. That's on the thumbnail. Well, Drew, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Until next time, I've been Jaimunji,
I've been Drew.
and you all have a good one. I'm going to leave that awkward pause in there. Bye bye.
Bye.